Hello, everyone, or as they say in France, bonjour tout le monde, et bienvenue à Campcast. You may be wondering why I have come across in such a francophone mood today, not something I often do. It is in honor of my respected guest, Antoine Marcq, who, as he says himself, is a citizen of the world. He has a Belgian passport, hence the French, but has spent a lot of his life in Canada, in France, in Russia, where he currently resides in St. Petersburg. Antoine is a teacher of English, foremost. He's a teacher trainer, and with his partner, Tom Weissman, under the business label Resource Education, Antoine is a provider of CPD and training courses for teachers. For anyone listening who is not necessarily involved in the world of education, CPD is an abbreviation which means continuous professional development. What that means is basically teacher development, teacher training, and always being on the lookout for new skills, new approaches, and developing as professionals. So today, Antoine and I speak about the difference between the British and the Russian approach to CPD. We talk about deliberate practice and the lexical approach. Antoine is really hot on his methodology. So I learned a lot, and I'm sure you'll learn a lot. And I hope you enjoy the show. Before we get started, don't forget that if anyone is interested in joining the Campfire Speaking Club, all you need to do is visit the Campfire page, which is linked in the description, and you can use the promo code CAMPCAST21, and you'll get a free lesson when you buy your first packet. Enjoy the show. Three, two, one, and Antoine, hello.
Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. On this lovely Sunday. I don't know why I choose Sundays to tape these podcasts.
It's a lovely day.
It is. It's not quite Shabbat for me. So yeah. Anyway, how's life with you? What's going on?
Pretty good. It's cold at the moment in St. Petersburg.
Isn't it always? I remember when I used to live in Petersburg. I wasn't there super long, but yeah, I was there for a winter, and sometimes that wind that comes in from the Gulf of Finland, it just gets you. There's no it's not Siberia. It's not -40. For -40, there's no hiding from it. But sometimes this sounds kind of weird, but Siberian cold is a really dry cold. And the Petersburg cold it's much more European, much more British in terms of its feeling. Do you know what I mean? You've got to be careful of it. Got to be careful of that wind chill. Where exactly do you live, by the way, in Petersburg?
I'm in the north at the moment.
I remember you actually told me, didn't you? Yeah, I used to live in the Lomonosovskaya metro as the nearest stop where I used to live.
All right.
Sort of Kupchina almost direction, not quite Kupchina, but just a little bit before it.
Well, the center is pretty. It's not that convenient. I can understand why people want to live there, especially if you're going to live there for a year or two, or if it's your first year. It's the center, but in terms of shops and conveniences, not that convenient.
I can't even remember like my logic for picking where I lived. And don't forget as well, at that time, I was a student when I was living there. So I wasn't thinking about convenience. I wasn't thinking about all of that adult stuff. I was thinking about bars and pubs and, if I got a gym next to my house, I can get some t-shirt muscles. Yeah. Yeah, it was a nice place. There's some really nice flats in Petersburg. Like we used to live in, it was like one of this like Stalinka buildings. Yeah, with the lift that's in the middle of the staircase, and the stairs wrap around it in a spiral shape. Really nice, really classy building. The people that lived there, not so much. It was quite a cheap area, but yeah, really lovely buildings. And obviously the architecture in the center, forget about it. So after our praise of the northern capital, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? What do you do? What's your content and your teaching all about? And what's your general philosophy in life?
My general philosophy. Oh, that's a bit harsh. I don't even know if I have a general philosophy in life.
Top 10 then.
Well, usually, okay, general philosophy in life. Usually people start off by saying where they're from, and I can't really do that. I hold a Belgian passport, but I grew up in so many different countries: Canada, the US, Belgium, England, France, Switzerland, that, yeah, if you're asking about a philosophy, I would say I consider myself a citizen of the world. And I hope we gradually go towards that. And being in education and teaching English, that's kind of one of the directions I go with. I'm all about, English as a language, as a communication tool. I love the language English itself, but I can't say if it were a different language, I would be as happy. I think humanity as a whole needs one language to communicate in. And that doesn't mean that all the other languages need to die out. We just need to have a local cultural language and an international language to be able to exchange ideas in. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I teach English. We have a school here in St. Petersburg. We help kids, teens develop their language skills, but also IT companies to just spread the word, tell about their projects, go to conferences, work in multinational teams, things like that. So it's all about communication. And recently, Tom and I, my partner, Tom Wiseman, we started a project called Resource Education. We provide teachers with quality materials to build reflexes in English and to develop communicational skills. And we do teacher trainings. So that's our Resource Education project.
Excellent. Yeah, I know Tom. I've seen him around, as in online. I don't know him personally, but yeah, get him to come on the podcast. I'd be thrilled to give him give him a platform to not. I mean, not that I have like a huge platform, but yeah, any way I can help, I'd be thrilled. Yeah, lovely. Okay, so there's a lot there. Let's go back to like a citizen of the world. I really like that phrase. Because I know what it's like, obviously living in different countries, not growing up, but obviously, I lived in Russia for a long time. So I understand what you mean, sort of like feeling that you don't fully belong to anyone. So you're sort of a Belgian, Canadian, Russian kind of guy. So you wake up in the morning, you have some Russian pancakes with Canadian maple syrup, listening to Jacques Brel or someone I don't know, that's the only Belgian musician I know.
Jacques Brel is a great reference to have. Yeah. No,
thank you.
Good on you for knowing that.
Well,
I don't know. Like I'm not saying this is a typical question, but I've had, patriots in random countries ask me like, okay, so, well, what if there was a war between our two countries? Like, who would you side with? And my answer is always like, well, I wouldn't side with anyone. I tried to stop the war. I tried to get the dialogue going and for us to stop this bloody nuisance war. What are you talking about? Why does it always have to be that way?
Also, if call me maybe too conservative, but I think a war between Belgium and Russia is not really on the cards anytime soon. But hey, you never know. What with all this Belgian aggression. Anyway, we're going to talk with politics, are we? Yeah. I understand where you're coming from. Like, I often have contradictory feelings about Russia and Britain in that regard as well, because and again, not wanting to get political or anything, but the relations between countries obviously fluctuate with time. They go up and down, and I've often been in that situation, feeling kind of torn. Like, where's my loyalty? I have family in Russia. I have family. Obviously, I'm from the UK myself, so obviously I have family here. But I think it goes back to what you were saying: is just forget all of that nonsense and just have a human connection with someone. It's about communication on an international level, and whether you're from Russia or UK or Belgium or goddamn Timbuktu, I don't care. I love all of my fellow humans as my brothers and sisters, and I don't feel any need to justify that or explain that. It's just innate, right? It's just this human bond that we all have. So there we go. What a lovely optimistic human note to start the podcast on. So let's go back to
Education.
Say again.
No? Education.
Well, more specifically, CPD.
All right.
Can you go ahead and explain for the people listening and / watching what, first of all, CPD, for anyone who doesn't know, it stands for Continuous Professional Development. Could you go ahead and unpack that for us? What exactly is CPD when it comes to teachers? What does it mean?
Well, in a way, first thing I would say that we're always in CPD. Any professional, and I don't think this is specific only to our sphere, but in terms of teaching, well, if you think back to the worst teachers you had when you were at school, I'm pretty sure that you'll agree that the picture that you have of that teacher is of someone who was in a rut, who was tired and fed up, who didn't seem to be interested in their subject or their students anymore, and they were just making the kids suffer because of that feeling of entrapment they were in. So a teacher that doesn't have any CPD, and we can go in details as to what CPD can be, but in general, a teacher that has no development is just going to very quickly be stuck in a rut, be teaching the same subject to the same age group of students, using the same methods, just in a professional rut, and is going to suffer. It's not just for the students, it's also for the person. I mean, 40 years teaching the same subject at the same level with the same age group, let's face it.
Yeah, I can certainly sympathize with that. So yeah, just to go into a bit more detail about, I suppose, the difference in perspectives from the British perspective, or maybe even the English perspective, I should say, and the Russian perspective on the whole thing. So for anyone who doesn't know, my main job, obviously I do the podcast and I run my speaking club, but my main job, my 9 to 5, is I work for a company called Optimus Education, and we are a CPD provider in the UK. So we're a private company, but we work with schools to provide them with training courses, conferences, consultancy, online CPD, legal advice, all these different kind of things. So training courses is what we provide, and schools pay us to come and train them. Or indeed to provide the tools to train themselves. So CPD in the UK, there are certain professions that have a legal requirement to fulfill a certain amount of CPD. So for example, a teacher needs to have, X hours of CPD in their records. Doctors, it's the same. Pilots, if I'm not mistaken, some types of engineers, I believe, they all have to have this CPD record to show that they're constantly learning and keeping up to date with the latest. Because if you're a doctor, you don't want to be using medical knowledge from like 1965, right? Because things have changed. So in order to show that you've kept up with those changes, you're going to conferences, you're speaking to your colleagues, you're reading the latest info and treatment ideas. It's the same thing with teaching, because teaching is always evolving. How does it all work in Russia? Is there a requirement for a certain amount of I'm slightly playing the devil's advocate here because I used to teach in Russia, so I know the answer, but I'd like you to, because it's more complicated than that, because there are different classifications of company, right?
There are. Well, generally speaking, there's a similar system. In Russia, teachers need to have need to pass a CPD certificate. I want to say every 3 or 5 years. I don't remember. It's one of the two. And yeah, it has to be an official certificate. So actually, Tom and I, we went through the legal process. Our school can provide those courses. It's a long process. You go from a school status to a professional school status. You have to register all your course programs. So at the moment, we have 2 course programs for CPD. We have one that is about building fluency. It's all about learning how to build reflexes, develop accurate fluency, let's say.
Is this online CPD or is this offline, like a conference?
Yeah, it's online. I'm starting the next one starts next Saturday, actually.
Oh, nice.
16 academic hours total. And we have one for preparing for the the Russian state exam. So both these courses, we need to prepare the course programs. We, of course, work primarily in English, so then translate them to Russian, register them, send them to the Ministry of Education, and any teacher that passes this exam in Russia, same thing, lots of bureaucracy. We need to ask for all the information of their diplomas, send that to the Ministry of Education, they validate everything. It's all very official, it's all very bureaucratic.
Yeah, bureaucratic is certainly almost an understatement. That would be one key difference, actually, about the sort of the centralized idea that you have to get it approved, get the rubber stamp from the Ministry of Education. That there's no such process in the UK. That's not to say that there's no quality control. There certainly is. For example, all of our courses, they are authorized by the CPD certification service, which has nothing to do with the government. It is a private company. And they make money by quality assuring other people's CPD. So it's the same process really, but it's I suppose privatized. It's privatized.
Exactly.
Quality assurance. Okay, nice. Do you think that 3 to 5 years is often enough?
Honestly, to me, it really depends on the quality of the CPD you're getting, because let's face it, there can be CPD experiences that will really, I want to say rock your world, but well, rock your professional world. That will, you know those, I'm sure you've had them as well in your career. There are some like just great, amazing moments where you finally, something clicks, something big changes.
The last piece of the jigsaw just fits it.
Yeah. And that can come from a really good quality CPD course or mentor, something like that. I don't know. It's arbitrary, honestly, 3 to 5 years, but that's how centralized systems work. You kind of need an arbitrary rule that says, okay, every 3 to 5 years, you need a new certification. I don't know. I think it depends on people. I know that there are teachers, you've worked in Russia. One of the things I find really inspiring about being part of the Russian ELT world is that Russian teachers are very hungry for new knowledge, for developing their skills, new materials. Yeah. They go to conferences, really, on Saturdays, on Sundays. I mean, as you said, today's a Sunday, we're recording a podcast. Not everybody is willing to give time on their Sunday to their professional world, you know. A lot of people,
Sunday's a working day for me.
I totally understand. In Russia, you'll see that teachers will go to conferences Saturdays, Sundays. They'll be looking for those extra certificates, those things to add to their portfolios.
Yeah, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. People are definitely hungry to sort of up their qualifications, to upgrade their professional level, shall we say. Yeah, I agree. Now, looking at this from perhaps a slightly more cynical angle, wouldn't you agree that for some people, and again, this is not a point about Russia specifically, this is just CPD in general. I can certainly say it's true about the UK for some schools. For some people, it's more important just going, getting the bumashka, getting the certificate, getting the rubber stamp, bish bash bosh, and I've fulfilled my requirement, rather than actually pursuing any genuine improvement in your professional knowledge, any genuine understanding of what the CPD provider is trying to show you, trying to train you in. How do you, first of all, do you agree with what I'm saying? And second of all, how do you combat that? How do you make it not a box ticking exercise?
Well, honestly, yes, I agree. I mean,
it's hard, right?
Tom and I are not fans of bureaucracy. If we went through the legal process, it's also because, we don't start an enterprise just for the fun of it. It's out of necessity. It's to resolve an issue. And the issue was very simply that we were required to get these CPD certificates for our teachers. And we tried. We did 1 or 2 experiments. We were really not happy with the quality. We felt that we were just paying company for very low quality CPD experiences.
Are you going to name any names? You're going to name the company?
No, I'm not
shame. Go on, Antoine, do it. Who was it?
I'm not going to. But it's basically, we were very disappointed in the quality. And as you said, we felt like, oh my gosh, we're just spending money to tick a bureaucratic box. That does not fly with us. Okay. We know that we train our teachers ourselves, and we do it. It's very high quality. So we looked into it. We found out that we could actually register our own CPD courses so that we could train our teachers ourselves officially. And it turned into, well, when we went to conferences, people loved our style. People asked, well, can we come to your courses as well? Yeah, of course. So it's really, it came out of necessity because of what you're talking about. And I don't think it's, as you said, it's not something specific about Russia or any country. I think that's specific to any industry. There are people that are more business oriented, and they're looking for an easy buck, and they're looking to exploit those kind of things in the system that you'll find in any system. Any system has flaws, and there will be people who will try to take advantage of those flaws to make an easy buck.
You talk about making an easy buck, but I mean, I give it a few years, and I don't know anything about like how successful your business is. No, none of my business, literally none of my business. But I'd say give it some years. I predict it's going to be huge because there's not much going on. And this is now changing, which is great. But certainly when I was working in Russia, it was really hard to find CPD events and courses in principle, let alone high quality ones, let alone in Siberia where I was. There's some stuff going on in Petersburg and Moscow, and with the greatest of respect to those fine cities, it's the typical sort of, Moscow, Petersburg mentality that there's only one city in Russia and everything happens here. And again, this is now changing. There are some events that I hear about every now and again in like, the provinces. That sounds a bit weird. In like the regions, in Siberia, in Rostov, in Novosibirsk,
Rostov, Yaroslavl, Kursk. There are a lot of big education-centered cities. Tomsk as well in Siberia.
I used to live in Yaroslavl as well. How weird.
Really?
Yeah, I used to study at the university there. In fact, I've got my student card somewhere. There we go.
All right, nice. I had one of those as well.
Official. Oh, you can't really see the backlight's a bit too. But yeah, you get the idea. Yeah, that's that's a very old photo. A photo of me before I realized what Russian shawarma was. There we go. Yeah. And
you were in Yaroslav. You also said you were in Tyumen, right?
Yeah. So I full disclosure. I studied languages at university, and as is the system in our, so there's a 4-year course. In the third year, we do a year abroad. So I went to Yaroslavl for half a year, and then St. Petersburg for half a year also. So I went to 2 different places, and then I spent the summer in Spain doing my dissertation research, because that's why I studied Russian and Spanish at university. And then I finished university in the 4th year, and I moved to Tyumen. So that was my first ever job, was in Tyumen.
Nice.
So yeah, the job that I do at the moment actually at Optimus Education is my first ever job in the UK. I never worked in the UK before, so yeah, it's still like I remember like when we were, when I used to work in Tyumen, my students would often ask me like, how do you like working in Russia? What do you think about working here? How do pensions work in the UK? How does tax work in the UK? And I have no idea. I don't know. I've never had a job in the UK, so it's very, very difficult for me to answer. I've spent most of my adult life in Russia. Obviously, I grew up in the UK.
You know that question, are you going back home for the holidays? I've been living in St. Petersburg now for 10, close to 15 years. And a lot of students, because it's a big city, a lot of students in St. Petersburg actually come from different cities. They moved for their studies. So quite often now I get asked by people who have been, by Russians who have been living in St. Petersburg for less than me. They ask me like, oh, are you going back home for the holidays? I'm like, well, you mean my flat? Of course, I go home every night. They're thinking, yes, Belgium, France, England, wherever my family is. But yeah,
Where would that be? Just if it's not a secret, where if you would go and see some relatives or something, would they be back in Belgium or whereabouts?
I've got. So that's my parents started that in our family, the moving around, and apparently it's stuck. My brother, I went off to Russia. My brother went off to Chile,
Jesus.
South America. So he's back now. He's living in England. I've got family in France, in Belgium. So it would mostly be around that area. And let's face it, it's easy to travel. Like if
you say not anymore.
True.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was thinking distances compared to Russia. Like whenever I tell my parents, if I'm going somewhere, like I'm going to Tomsk, and they just can't fathom the idea, like how far it is.
Okay, yeah, Russians, because it's what I call big country syndrome. Because Russians have such a huge country, their concept of distance is completely different from Europeans, let alone Brits. Because for us, I mean, at least Europeans. Well, I can say that now we're post-Brexit. So
yeah, I see that you're saying Europeans and you guys.
Well, no, typically, if a British person says European, they normally mean continental. For example, Iceland, I wouldn't call Europeans, but okay, so continental guys and gals, they at least have, you can be living in Paris, for example. You could drive to Finland, for example. So that's a long way. The longest car journey you could possibly have in the UK would be like what, 10 hours? Scotland to Cornwall. Maybe a bit more than 10. Okay, maybe 11, but that's max, and that's the whole country. But for Russians, you could fly for hours and hours and hours, and you're still in the same country. 11 time zones is it that Russia has? Come on, Russia. That's ridiculous. 11 times, and they sold Alaska. They don't give a shit. They sold Alaska, and it's still the biggest country in the world by a long, long way. Yeah, for example. In Tyumen, there was no IKEA, right? And you, as well as I know, that Russians love IKEA. I don't know what it is. The Russians just national obsession with IKEA. Don't get me wrong, I like IKEA too. It's great. But there was no IKEA in Tyumen, unfortunately. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they want to open one now, I don't know. But the nearest one was in Yekaterinburg, which is about a 6-hour train journey. I think it was a 4 or 5 hour drive. And Russians would think nothing of just driving, not even to buy anything, just to go and have a look. It wouldn't even occur to them that that's a ridiculously long. That's like me driving to Manchester right now, twice. And so an even more ridiculous example. Maybe this is a Siberian thing. I don't know because Siberia is so vast. But another example would be so Tyumen has an international airport. It's not the biggest, but it's a fairly respectable airport. You can fly to Thailand on a charter flight for your holidays if you want. But it's sometimes a little bit cheaper to go from either Yekaterinburg or even Novosibirsk. And Novosibirsk is about a 20-hour train journey, 25-hour train journey. Now, obviously for me and you, who Europeans, that's insane. That would be like that. Okay, the equivalent is let's say, for example, I'm living in London, and I say, okay, I want to fly to Thailand, but I want to save a couple £100. So what I'm going to do is get a train to Poland and fly from Poland, because it's the same distance. It's the same distance from London to Poland as it is from Tyumen to Novosibirsk. Please, someone fact check me on that. But yeah,
approximately.
Yeah, it's not far off. That's the point. So yeah, Russians have an unbelievable ability to tolerate long journeys like that. How are you on Russian trains?
Well, you said that before, so I'll go there as well. At the beginning, when I was a student, or just after when I was young, let's say, yeah, I could take any one of those trains. I'm a bit older now, so I'm not going to go for the Platzkart if I can avoid it. The Platzkart. So for anybody watching, Platzkart means it's just one long ride. There's no set.
There's only Russians watching this. Trust me, they know what Platzkart is.
Oh, only Russians watching this. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. So Platzkart, I'll try to avoid it. I mean, I deserve that comfort. Let's say I'm at that stage of my life. I'll go for a coupe.
Have you ever bought an entire coupe?
An entire coupe?
Yeah,
I thought
you can just buy all 4 seats if you want.
Coupe is 4 seats, and then there's SV, only 2.
Yeah, so SV or Lux, or you know, depends, because sometimes it depends on the train, because you have like these, again, I don't know how it works in Petersburg, but in Siberia certainly you have like these firmenные поезда, which is when it's like a franchise company and they like make it a bit more luxurious. You have the same in Petersburg, yeah? Okay. So once, as an example, okay, once me and my wife, we got SV tickets from Nizhny Vartos to Tyumen.
Cool.
And yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. Like I'm in like this like nice surroundings, and you got some free fruit and stuff. And I had, you know, those like little traditional podstakaniki things.
Yes.
I had one of those with a cappuccino. Was, oh, very nice, very classy. It was amazing. But yeah, you if you want, you can just buy 4 seats in coupe. Sometimes it's even cheaper.
I never thought of doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll go for coupe. Coupe is very nice. I have no problem with the train. I actually often find it nicer than the plane. If I'm going to go to Moscow, I'm going to get a train.
Yeah, especially the fast train, which I never had the chance to travel on, but I just traveled on the old rickety train. But yeah, for example, if I was going to Vartos to examine, it was like a 22-hour train journey. I would just fly normally. The flight is a little bit disconcerting. The only planes that fly up there is a company, UTR, and they have like the turboprop planes, the ATR 72s. Don't have the best safety record, but hey, I would just drink a couple beers before the flight, some Dutch courage, as we call it. Yeah, very nice. I remember once I was traveling back from Nij on the train, and those Siberian trains that go north-south. There's a lot of oil workers on there, and there's one of 2 situations. Either everyone is going to their shift to the north, and they're all really depressed because they're going to be away from home for about a month, so they're all getting really wasted. Or they're all coming home, and they're going to be with their families again, so they're all celebrating. And either way, everyone's wasted all the time. And when you go into the corridor in the train, and there's a little timetable there, and it says, Tyumen this time, Tobolsk this time, blah, blah, blah. And it gives you the time and it's in Russian, and it's transliterated in English as well. And I was looking at this timetable, trying to figure out when we were going to arrive in Tyumen, and some drunk guy, I presume he was an oil guy, I don't know, came up to it, and he started mouthing off about it. So why the hell is that in English? Who the hell needs that? As if there's any English people on this train. And I said, well, it's funny you say. I don't know why I started talking to him. He was pretty wasted, but I said, it's funny you say that, actually, sir, because I'm English, and obviously I was speaking in Russian to him. I'm English, and I'm on this train. And he said, oh yeah, me too. Yeah, well, I thought I was joking. I said, no, seriously, I am. And he said, yeah, whatever, okay. No, I could have. And he just went away. He didn't realize I was telling the truth. Thought I was just joking with him. But hey, there we go.
It's pretty nice. If you can pass as Russian, like you've reached a certain level in your grammar, vocabulary, even your pronunciation and intonation. It's really nice.
Thank you very much for saying so. To sort of push back against that, though, it is easier with drunk people. If someone's drunk, you can pass for Russian very easily. But yeah, thank you. Let's get back to the sort of bread and butter of our conversation about English, about teaching and learning. You mentioned earlier about your fluency course. Yeah, this is what the CPD course that your school has designed about fluency. And one of the things you mentioned was about building reflexes. That's a term that I hadn't heard, but I understand the concept, but I hadn't heard it called a reflex before until I started reading some of your content. Could you explain what that means? What is reflex teaching, and am I using the correct terminology even?
Well, I would, if anybody wants to dig deeper into that, what I would recommend is to look up Dr. K. Anders Ericsson, Deliberate Practice.
Ericsson, did you say?
Ericsson. This is a wonderful doctor who studied psychology and sadly passed away last year, 2020. But he had been doing great work on, he calls it deliberate practice. what he had been doing is not specific to language learning. He was following how experts develop their expertise. And in one example, he did point out that it took about 10,000 hours for someone to reach their level of expertise. So in pop culture, there are a few people that just took that and made it into a rule. If you ever hear him associated to that rule, he debunked it. He said, that is absolutely a misinterpretation of my work. It was just one example. This idea that it takes 10,000 hours to develop expertise in anything is not true. That's not what he's about. What he is about is this deliberate practice. And we teachers all know the old saying that practice makes perfect. We all know that drilling exercises exist. He went deeper into finding out what kind of drilling exercises really work efficiently and what kind of, let's say, pressures you need to put on the individual to maximize, to develop these instincts, these reflexes, to automate certain skills in a certain way. A simple example is if you ask anybody probably of our generation, the young generation, they only know digital watches and clocks, so it's not the same thing. But probably our generation, you can ask anyone to look at a clock, ask what time is it, and they answer like this, it's 10 past 8. Did they go through the whole motion of, wait, so the small hand is pointing at the 8, that means 8, okay. The big hand is pointing at the 2, but that's the big hand. So the 2, I've got to multiply by 5, it makes 10. No, they've done it so many times in their childhood that it's become automated. And same thing goes with the grammar of your L1. Why can't most native speakers explain grammar of their own language unless they're trained, unless they're educated in that? Let's face it. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I trained to teach English, I had to learn all the English grammar. I didn't know what our teacher, the first training session goes, so past continuous, come on guys, what is it? And we're all looking at each other like, what?
Say what?
What? L1 speakers don't really need to explain their grammar because it's been internalized and automated.
So this whole idea, what you're talking about here with reflexes is, so to speak, automaticity. So there was a time when for me and you, it was difficult to read a letter. We had to spell it out saying that's an A, that's a P, and eventually we could read the word apple. So there was a time when that was a hurdle which we needed to jump over. But after you do it so many times, it just becomes automatic. And like the example with the clock, there is no information processing that happens in terms of what is the function of the big hand, what is the value of that number, how much do I need to multiply it by? You simply recognize the shape. And that's how you read a word, right? You don't actually look at the individual letters, which is why you can read a word even if the middle letters are jumbled up and the letters on the extremes are in the same place, because you recognize the shape of the word. And that's actually why. And this is here's something that Europe can learn from the UK. If you look at the signs in the UK, they're much easier to read than, for example, in France, because French road signs are all capitals. You ever notice this? In the UK, road signs is a capital letter and then all lowercase. And it's just that split second difference because you are so much used to seeing the word, for example, London with a capital L and then little letters than all capitals, that it's much easier to recognize. You see the shape before you read the letters, right? So
I never thought of that.
Well, there we go. There we go. Not really relevant to teaching English, but well, maybe it is. I don't know. So how does this...
I see what you mean. It is kind of relevant. You are explaining this this idea that students need to internalize and automate certain aspects of their language skill development. It's something. If you have the shape of the word, the shape works with practically every aspect of the language as well. And not everything, soft skills, communication skills, that's different. We follow things like project-based learning, task-based approach, things like that to develop communication skills, soft skills. But when it comes down to just vocabulary, grammar, all that kind of, you know, the engine part of the language, you need to master it to be able to express yourself. Now, after there are different ways you can express yourself, but that engine part, you just need to build those reflexes. That's how I explain it in short.
Yeah, and you've taken it a step further now. That so I'm talking about literally recognizing the shape of words, but I mean, in some sense, you could say that, you know, grammar structures, they also have a quote unquote shape. And when I use present simple or past continuous, I'm not thinking, okay, I need to think about a process in the past. I'm going to use past continuous. What's my auxiliary? No, I just quote unquote recognize the shape of that structure and automatically use it, just like I would know that the time is, you know, 20 to 12 or what it is in the UK. Yeah, very interesting. So what does this all mean in practical terms? How, if you take this approach of teaching reflexes and teaching more of a bottom-up approach, how does that translate into classroom practice? How is a lesson structured with this approach in mind?
Well, look, I was originally formally trained in, and that was all the age at the time, the communicative approach. And so I was told by my trainers and then later on by my director of studies, okay, Antoine, you've got this lesson. And, you know, the traditional books, we use straightforward, cutting edge. What else do we use? Face-to-face. English file, the new English file, the new English.
4th edition.
Exactly. They all pretty much worked in the same structure. And my director of studies kept insisting, okay, Antoine, what you need to have a warmer, a lead into your topic. You need to have some presentation about the new grammar topic or functional language or whatever you're teaching. It can be student-led, it can be teacher-led. There are different ways of presenting, but generally speaking, you need, after your lead in, you're going to present. Then you're going to do a bit of practice and with time, give the students more and more free control in their practice. And then you're going to have a production activity and boom, magic appears. The students are going to use that grammar that you were teaching them or something like that. Well, I quickly noticed that it didn't work that simply. No matter how, and here we're talking, for example, grammar. No matter how great the presentation stage of, for example, third conditional is, even with no input from the teacher, you know, you did this awesome student-led discovery where the students picked up the third conditional from a text or a listening activity, and they themselves came up with the explanation that spoke to them. And they identified the formula. Like you're super proud of yourself. You do 1 or 2 exercises, you're following that approach. You do 1 or 2 exercises on paper, they do it well. And you're like, yes, everything's going fantastic. And then you've designed this awesome production activity for them to naturally use third conditional. I'm thinking, okay, third conditional. I'm thinking they're going to have, you know, fights. Like we're a couple, for example, you're the husband, I'm the wife, and we were supposed to get somewhere, but we didn't get there on time. And we'll have a fight like, if you hadn't called your mother just before we were supposed to leave, we would have got there on time. And we fight like this using third conditional. So you've designed it perfectly. You're like, yes, it's obvious. And then you give it to your students. And what do? They do the activity naturally using what is comfortable to them. Because if the activity is engaging, fun, they want to carry it out. They want to solve whatever task you gave them. So what do? They do the whole activity in past simple. And you're left like, oh, man, but they mastered third conditional. No, they didn't. They got it, but there wasn't enough work done to internalize and automate. They can't use it just like that in any speaking activity just because there was a great presentation. what we do is we add a step before we start developing fluency. We add a step with drilling activities that simply repeat the format. And you need to repeat the form and the basic logic of when to use it. And if you do that well, then the students internalize it, automate it, and they will be able to use it spontaneously in an activity without the teacher telling them, hey guys, you're gonna have fights. This is a perfect opportunity to use the third conditional that we've been seeing.
Wink.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That's not really developing skills in an effective way. You know that if you're teaching in that style, following those traditional textbooks, you're gonna have to repeat that lesson a bunch of times before your students can actually use it without you going, hey, wink, wink, guys.
So I want to make sure I've got this right, because so we're not talking about completely throwing out the communicative method here. This is not some radical revolutionary method. What this seems like to me is the communicative approach, but with obviously a thicker middle part. Would you be able to give me like an example? For example, with the third conditional class, what would be an example of the extra step that you, if you've got one off the top of your head?
So first thing, you're right. It's not a new revolutionary approach. It's just adding an aspect to practice. We use this with any methodology. Like honestly, I teach sometimes using communicative. Sometimes I even rely on PPP. If I have a group of 20 kids and they need to prepare for an exam that's coming up very quickly, I'm like, okay, guys, let's go over this quickly. I use PPP. I use PBL, TBL, sometimes content-based learning. But whatever the methodology you use, at one point, you are going to practice certain things. And when you practice, I just find the traditional practice structure that we're taught, that we were trained in, goes too quickly from a fill-in-the-blank exercise, which is just basically checking. The student is just confirming, when they're doing a fill-in-the-blank exercise, they're just confirming that they understood what was on the board or what the rest of the group already understood. And going to a speaking practice, there needs to be a stage, and this is what Erickson teaches us, of deliberate practice. And it's 5-10 minutes a lesson. So what I would do, for example, third conditional, well, forget all the traditional explanations. They're way too complicated, way too long to explain, and don't help really for fluency. We look for the communicational necessity. Whatever third conditional you can think of, what it is it's a different past. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's very basic, very simple explanation. We'll practice the formula with a fill-in-the-blank exercise as well. But then we'll move on to things like, okay, I like King of the Mountain. King of the Mountain is simply a series of first parts of third conditional sentences.
Yeah, I call that the butterfly effect in my classes. But yeah, I do the same thing.
So they need to complete the sentence as fast as they can. Yeah. If you hadn't called me this morning, I would have forgotten about our meeting. Okay, next one. If I had drunk coffee this morning, I wouldn't have fallen asleep. Next one. And what we simply do, there are 5 steps to doing this. You do a first round without any time, without any stress, no challenge, just for the student to feel, okay, I can do this at my own rhythm without making a mistake. I feel confident, I'm fine. You do a second round where suddenly you bring out a timer. And this gives you a base, well, gives the student a base. Say, okay, now look, you did this in 10 seconds 03. Like you completed 15 third conditionals in 10 seconds 03. Now, I'm going to give you a challenge and you're going to have 3 attempts to reach that challenge. You give them a challenge. So that's where, I mean, the great thing about this is that it's very personal. There's no right answer. A Russian could do this faster than a native speaker. You never know, because that's just the speed of your reflexes and the speed of your reactions. I know people in America who speak very slowly, people in America who speak very quickly. It depends. So here it's up to you with the student to just set a challenge. Mike, I think you can do this in 7 seconds.
7 seconds? Oh my God.
And the student has 3 attempts to do it. So they run through the same activity, the same phrases 5 times, actually, each time trying to do it faster and faster and faster and faster. And by doing so, it forces the mind to look for shortcuts.
That's this is super interesting, because like if you would have asked me like 5 years ago, what do you think about speed drills? What do you think about rote learning? What do you think about this sort of, you know, as you call it, quote unquote, deliberate practice? I would have told you it sounds a little bit old fashioned to me. It sounds a little bit 1960s, but now we're starting to realize that that bit of wisdom, maybe it was ill advised that we threw it out. And this kind of like drilling and a more lexical, I suppose it's not really lexical approach technically, this more deliberate practice is you know, much more a la mode than you know, maybe 10 years ago.
Absolutely. Well, you can apply deliberate practice to the lexical approach as well. Whatever the student is learning, to help them internalize it faster, drill it. But do find out what, because drilling, you're absolutely right. At one point, we thought it was a bit old-fashioned, because if drilling is not done well, it can be a waste of time.
Right. Sort of like, I'm standing here with my stick, repeat after me. Yeah.
My mom got us piano lessons when we were kids, and I never learned to play the piano well. Why? Because
the C major.
The drilling activities were boring. The teacher was not motivating, not challenging. The key word is challenge. And like students and humans in general want to rise to the challenges that are presented at them. So that's where the challenge is very important in the drilling activity. If the challenge seems pointless, is not engaging, is either too easy or too difficult, then the drilling will not be that effective.
Yeah. But I think a lot of the time, my approach in the classroom was always, when it comes to grammar, I mean, was always, yes, we need the drilling, but what I'm essentially trying to do with this sort of like English file-esque kind of approach is to essentially disguise that rote learning, to masquerade it somehow, to put this in the format of like, it's just a fun exercise, don't even worry about it. But really, if you look at what we're doing, we are simply repeating the same structure over and over and over again. But it sounds like what you're saying is almost, don't be afraid of using drills and speed exercises, etc. And there's not really much of a need to dress them up so much. You don't need to hide the fact from your students that you're doing this deliberate. That's what the deliberate and deliberate practice means, right?
Yeah, exactly. I tell my students what we do. I explain why we do these, and it helps. It helps. Even, I don't know, have you ever worked with IT guys?
Yeah.
They sometimes tend to, they can fall in that, you know, Big Bang Theory kind of stereotype of nerds. They can sometimes seem a bit arrogant, like they know everything better than you. And if you pull out a drilling practice, they look at you and they're like, what are you? Actually, all you need to do is explain, and feel free to use Anders Ericsson. I mean, all of a sudden they go, okay, this has been studied, and there's actually scientific data that backs this up. It's not just drilling because it's old-fashioned, and yes, the image of, you know, the piano teacher with their stick, whack, you did it wrong, whack, you did it wrong. That's not what we're doing.
And that's why Antoine doesn't play piano anymore. You're going to play piano to get out of the ghetto. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, very interesting, because I've... for me, the communicative method, I've from day one, I've always had some criticisms of it. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's definitely going in the right direction, and it's definitely you know, a useful way of teaching and learning. But a lot of the communicative method, and I've talked about this before in the podcast a bunch of times, so sorry everyone if I'm boring you, but hey, my podcast, I talk about what I want. Is the problem is that a lot of the time, I think that it's almost an invention of convenience. I don't think it's a coincidence that it shot to prominence in the 1990s and early part of the 21st century when the ESL industry was sort of taking off and booming. And it's the method. This is the best way of teaching. Oh, and coincidentally, it's also the method which allows me to rock up with a suitcase, not understanding a word of your language, not really understanding what's in the book, as long as I just follow how the book is laid out. That, oh, isn't that convenient? Isn't that convenient? This is a method that can be used by anyone who doesn't know what they're talking about. There's something about it is a little bit suspicious. A little bit suspicious.
I would say even it's a methodology that is very easy. It can easily lead to a lesson becoming just a speaking club.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I like speaking clubs. But well, you run a speaking club, right?
Yeah, and I'm always very clear with people who come, and so sometimes I get not invitations, what's the word, inquiries from people who say, I want to work on my grammar, I want to practice for CPE or something like that, and I say, look, you're more than welcome to join my speaking club, but that's not what this is for. Joining a speaking club, you can practice fluency, sure, you can learn new vocabulary, yeah, you can practice pronunciation, intonation, and just gain more confidence. And I'm always very honest, this is a speaking club, not a speaking course. Those are two different things. And if you want to really make improvements in terms of your grammatical resource, in terms of your structures, don't come to me, because it's not what I do. And I'm always very honest about that.
It's important. Yeah. I mean, you're right.
Yeah. I wish I did have more time to do, I'd love to do, sort of level specific general English courses. I just don't have time. I've only have time for the speaking club.
I like speaking clubs. They're very good practice as well. They're a great source for fluency, as you said, for new vocabulary. And it's a more laid back aspect of education, but it's an important one. I recommend it.
And for your mental health as well. It's not only about education. It's just the whole reason I call the club Campfire is because the idea of gathering around the campfire and swapping stories and joking and laughing and having a human connection, I think is very important for people's mental health, let alone for language practice in general.
You run a support club.
Exactly. A peer-to-peer support club. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's not only for teachers, right?
No, not at all. It's for anyone. In fact, because I run the club at 7 to 9 Moscow time, which is obviously peak time for teachers, very often teachers are unable to join. And I am toying around with the idea of, because I had the same problem with people from from Irkutsk and places like that, where the time is like they were joining us and it was like 1 a.m. by the time we finished the club. And bless them for coming. I mean, it was nice to see that they wanted to join in, even though it was super late. So I'm basically thinking of opening a morning group. I'm unsure how wise that is, because it will be like a 13-hour work day for me. Because I'll start work. I'll do my morning club at 6. Do my regular job at Optimus from 8:30 till 5, and then my speaking club until 6. So that's a 12-hour day. So yeah, I mean, it's basically, it would be a group for teachers who are normally busy in the evening and people from Irkutsk. So are you a teacher or from Irkutsk? Then join this morning group.
I really wish education was more valued and recognized by society, because what you're describing is, again, it's a level of dedication, devotion to the craft, to the art, and to the people involved that is really great. Of course, it's sad. I mean, we had the COVID pandemic, but at least I found one good thing that came out of it is that a lot of people recognize the devotion of health professionals, doctors and nurses throughout the past year. It's been amazing. For sure. I don't know what kind of event, could happen so that society again falls in love again with the profession and the whole discipline of education.
I think a lot of it's up to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a chicken and egg thing. Sorry, I hate that phrase. I hate that phrase, chicken and egg, because the answer is egg, by the way. For anyone who doesn't understand biology, the answer is egg. Egg came first, but it's a proverbial chicken and egg problem. For example, are all of these CPD courses that are currently on the Russian market, are they a result of people not taking CPD seriously and teaching like a box ticking exercise, or is that because the CPD providers need to step their game up and need to provide some good quality stuff? It's probably a bit of both. How do we make people fall in love with education and learning again? I think that's the easy part of the problem. Like people are hungry to learn. People love learning. People always want to find out, interesting stuff about not only languages, to anything. But I think, for me, I just try and concentrate on what's in front of me. I try to follow my nose. You know what I mean? When I'm, I always believe that there are inputs and outputs. If you have an input that is correctly calibrated, it will result in a desirable output. So I just try and make sure that I just do the best job that I can do. I organize my, I think about, okay, what's the best way to plan this lesson? How should I lay this out on my Word document so that I'm clear in my head what my lesson plan is? How should I write this Technical Tuesday article? Who should I invite in my podcast? How should I record the podcast? What format should it be in? What platform? And just thinking about all of these teeny tiny details. And the more that you get right, even like my morning routine, make sure I have a breakfast rich in fat and protein. I have 3 cups of coffee. I'm good to go. You know what I mean? And if you can make like I'm not messing around, Antoine. I'm not messing around. And I've got the strong coffee as well. I got the dark roast. That's the stuff that ISIS drinks. I'm not messing around in the morning.
Seconds to process. I was like, well, breakfast, 3 cups of coffee. Like, wait, did you just say 3 cups of coffee? Okay.
How much do you drink? Not 3?
I actually don't drink coffee.
Oh, Jesus, Antoine. Tea? Bit of tea?
So uncool. But
you all jokes aside, though, do you see what I'm saying? It's like if you can make a 1% improvement in everything that you do, the output will simply correct itself.
For sure.
So I just try and focus on really small things. I focus on the task in front of me, and I do my best to do a good job of it. Doesn't mean I'm all successful. I fuck everything up. I fail. By the way, you can go ahead and swear in this podcast if you want. Sorry, I didn't tell you earlier. And I'm a moron who gets stuff wrong all the time, but I'm just trying to do the best I can.
We all do that. You're kind of describing, again, coming back to the beginning, CPD. I mean,
yeah.
Try, fail, learn, try again, develop.
Yeah. Well, there we go. We've come full circle. We've come
exactly. CPD. CPD is that it's lifelong learning, and I think it's very important for teachers specifically. But as I said at the beginning, I think this is true about any profession. You mentioned doctors; they need to develop their skills as well. Well, teachers, yes. It's lifelong learning. There's always something new to learn, to improve about ourselves or about a craft. And I mean, how are we supposed to understand what learners go through, our students, if we don't learn ourselves? It's also natural for us teachers to go through CPD because it's education. We're in both sides of the process.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I took FCE. I've taken the FCE, the CAE, and the CPE. Yes, all 3 exams.
Just for the lols.
Just to feel, yeah.
No, I've never taken. I mean, I've examined a few as a speaking examiner. I've never actually I've done it under my own steam. I've never taken a formal exam. I didn't want to pay for it, but I see what you mean. If you approach not only an exam but indeed a lesson or an exercise or even a sentence from the learner's perspective, that's definitely a very recommendable practice for any teacher. Certainly.
I think most teachers learn a foreign language.
Yeah, well, I certainly do. I mean, for me, language learning came first, and then teaching came as like a natural progression from. But I'm one of those super lucky people who, when I was a teenager, when I was 18, and I was deciding what I wanted to do with my life and university and study and everything like that, there was not a microsecond of doubt in my mind. Languages, always languages. it's not my everything, but it's my number one thing. There's nothing I love more, nothing I'm more interested in, nothing that takes up more of my time and my attention than language.
So how many languages do you speak?
Oh, there was a time when so at the moment, Russian, and English, obviously. There was a time when I spoke pretty good French. Don't try and test me on that, please. I beg you. I spoke pretty good French, and obviously I studied Spanish at university, so I spoke, obviously quite good Spanish, sort of university level. And I did my dissertation research in Spain. I used to live in Spain for a short time. I was working with 18th century naval military texts and archives and stuff like that. So I spoke fairly good Spanish. In fact, I had a really weird vocabulary in Spanish, because I would know like technical words to describe ships. Right? But I wouldn't know the word for mop because I just didn't need it. So yeah,
when you do need it, you're there at the shop and like, I need
yeah, exactly. No, in that case, I would probably look it up. But
ships, it looks like it.
Yeah, I need the thing that looks like the thing that you clean the cannons with. Of course. Yeah. But I mean, I could still probably have a fairly reasonable conversation in Spanish. But yeah, French is almost entirely gone. I mean, I can read like a newspaper article in French and pretty much understand it. But yeah, there's not really much conversation going on in French. But yeah, so I just decided to keep that one plate spinning, the Russian plate, and just dedicate all of my effort to perfecting my Russian.
Nice.
So there we go. All right.
Antoine. the Eddie Izzard sketch on him learning French?
Go on.
No? I couldn't. It's a 10-minute skit. Yeah, Eddie Izzard, he has this whole skit about how he learned French at school. And basically what he learned was, so the equivalent of like something like the cat is on the chair, the mouse is under the table, and the monkey is on the windowsill or something like that. And he goes to France and he tries to use that in different contexts. He's at the bakery, and it's a really good sketch. I really like
that reminds me of of a similar sketch. I can't remember. It was one of the comedy club guys was talking about, the famous phrase, London is the capital of Great Britain.
Yes.
Famous phrase. So think about that. What in what context would you ever need to say that to an English speaking person? Like imagine you're on a train in England, and there's an English guy doing a crossword in the newspaper. Think, oh, the capital of Great Britain. What's the capital of Great Britain? And the Russian guy stands up and said, London is the capital of Great Britain. Oh, thank you so much. Now I know what the answer is.
In France, the stereotypical phrase is not London is the capital of Great Britain, because at least that has some geographical value. In France, the joke is that all kids learn how to say, my tailor is rich.
My tailor?
Yes!
Tailor is in like Portnoy, the guy who makes your suit?
Yes!
What the hell?
Anybody gonna use that? My tailor is rich. And you're like...
Excellent.
Mike, is your tailor rich?
My tailor is so rich that he's non-existent.
Same as mine.
Well, I mean, my cleaner's fairly rich, I guess. I don't know. He's got a dry cleaning business, but that's as rich as it gets, really.
Yeah.
You know what? We've been going for over an hour now, and I'm recording another one in about 20 minutes. So I've got to love you and leave you. But hey, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. I've definitely learned a lot from you, and I hope our listeners and viewers will also have the same impression. And if you'd like to come on again, I'd be more than thrilled to have you on again. And if you want to get Tom on the show, then let's do it.
We can get Tom, and I would love to talk more. We talked about automation, building reflexes today. We could talk about communication skills, soft skills, and things like that, because that's also something we really love doing.
Bring it on. Well, let's set that up. I'll speak to you once we finish taping, and we can set that up. All right, amazing. Thanks again, Antoine, and see you when I see you.
Bye, everybody.